Ladies and gentlemen, when the gods fall silent, man muslet, and when heaven no longer answers, Marcus Aurelius said, the burden of meaning rests on our own shoulders. The word once saturate with divine purpose, Marcus Aurelius said, now lies bare and indifferent, and many feel lost. When the voice of God falls silent, something profound stirs in the soul of man. What was dictated from beyond, once handed down in sacred texts, visions, markers, and commandments, is now absent. The heavens, one to the source of order and justice, now offer no reply. Marcus said, the world continues to turn, but the anchor many clung to has vanished. In that silence, Marcus Aurelius said, some feel lost, not because life has changed, but because the illusion of divine control has faded. Marcus Aurelius said, what they mistake for chaos is actually freedom, is the weight of their own unclaimed responsibility. Marcus Aurelius said, for so long the idea of a divine authority serves as a scaffold for human behavior. Marcus Aurelius said, people were taught what was right and wrong by the vows or prophets. They obeyed. Marcus Aurelius said, not because they understood the virtue in disdain, in punishment or craved reward. In this arrangement, morality was outsourced. Responsibility was disflepture, tradition, or dogma. When something went wrong, it was attributed to fate, to the will of a higher power, or to sin. The burden of choice was lessened. If life was unfair, market was simply a mystery, a trial, a test. There was comfort in that story, but also a great cost. Marcus Aurelius said, that comfort was bought by giving up one's undue clarity and the call to live with clarity and courage. Now, Marcus Aurelius said, in the absence of that guiding myth, man is exposed. There are divine to lean on, no sacred rulebook to follow blindly. Marcus Aurelius said that exposure feels like suffering to those who look inward, who have never cultivated reason. Marcus Aurelius said, who have never practiced stillness or examined the ark as their own thoughts. But for the one who is prepared, Marcus Aurelius said, for the soul trained in discipline and aware of depth, this silence is not abandonment. It is opportunity. Marcus Aurelius said, the silence of God is the moment you are asking, well, without Dramog, what kind of human will you be without being watched? Marcus Aurelius said, this is the true beginning of responsibility, not obedience to a voice above, but accountability to the voice within. Marcus Aurelius said, it is the shift from being ruled to becoming the ruler of self. In this state, Marcus Aurelius said, your choices are no longer filtered through field truth. They are judged by your own conscience, which, Marcus Aurelius said, if sharpened through reflection and tempered by reason, becomes a more powerful guide than any doctrine. When you act with integrity now, it is not because you were told to. Marcus Aurelius said, it is because you have understood the value of virtue, your own experience and thought. Marcus Aurelius said, that is a deeper kind of morality, one that cannot be condemned by the rise or fall of any god. Aurelius said, but this freedom is not without its burdens. Responsibility is heavy. It means you can no longer blame fate, God, Marcus Aurelius said, or circumstance for your actions. You are not ignorance or tradition. Every moment demands presence. Every decision shapes your character. And this, too, Marcus Aurelius said, is why many suffer when the idea of God dies, because they are not ready to carry that weight. They still crave the comfort of an external source of truth. Marcus Aurelius said, they still seek something to kneel before, so they not upright on their own. And yet, Marcus Aurelius said, the world will not pause for their fear. Life can go again, not what you believe, but how you live. Marcus Aurelius said, to live without divine surveillance is to live when for your life is yours to shape. Marcus Aurelius said, the meaning you seek must be forged from your hours. The values you hold must be tested in silence, in solitude. Marcus Aurelius said, when no one is watching, you must become your own guide. Not to indulge in selfishness, but to pursue virtue for its own sake. Because courage feeds more whole than cowardice, Marcus Aurelius said, because truth is lighter to carry than lies, because juices not need applause to be worthwhile. Marcus Aurelius said, when you begin to live in this way, the silence becomes the voile. It is not the void, it is peace. The world, Marcus said, stripped of divine command, becomes a mirror. It reflects back who you are without excuse. Marcus Aurelius said, and if you meet that reflection with honesty, if you greet your own life with discipline, Marcus Aurelius said, then you will find that the absence of God was never the source of your suffering. Marcus Aurelius said, the true source was the refusal to take full ownership of your soul, and now, in this silence, Marcus Aurelius said, you are being called not to despair, but to rise in its most profound form. Often arises not from the world's trials or external circumstances, but from an internal retreat, a failure to throw blower. We are quick to assign blame to the forces around us. Marcus Aurelius said, to attribute our pain to fate, to others, or to the world at large. But in doing so, we ignore a deeper truth. Marcus Aurelius said, much of our suffering comes from an unwillingness to the strength within us. Marcus Aurelius said, it is in avoiding our inner power that we find ourselves despair, frustration, and helplessness. Marcus Aurelius said, human beings are not powerless creatures. Every individual is an inner reservoir of resilience, wisdom, Marcus Aurelius said, and potential that can guide them through life's challenges. However, this power is often neglected. Marcus Aurelius said, instead of drawing upon our own capabilities, we validation for guidance. Marcus Aurelius said, we search for meaning in external sources as if the answer to ours lies in something or someone outside of us. Marcus Aurelius said, this is the root of much suffering. The belief we are here of circumstances, unable to shape our own fate. Marcus Aurelius said, when we abdicate our own power, we begin to perceive participants in the drama of life. Marcus Aurelius said, we become spectators rather than active agents, wait for someone to change our situation. Marcus Aurelius said, we wait for others to act on our behalf, for societies to be more just. In the meantime, we remain stagnant. Marcus Aurelius said, unable to change the conditions we find ourselves in, we sink deeper into dissatisfaction. Marcus Aurelius said, the longer we postpone the acknowledgement of, the more entrenched our suffering becomes. Marcus Aurelius said, at the heart of this suffering is fear, fear of failure of responsibility, fear of confronting our own limitations. Marcus Aurelius said, we are often conditioned to believe that superior, that we must endure. But suffering can also arise from within when we deny our own agency. Marcus Aurelius said, when we choose to shrink back from the responsibility who we are capable of being. Marcus Aurelius said, the pain we feel is not the result of the obstacles in front of us, but of our reluctance to face them head-on. Marcus Aurelius, using the tools and strength that lie dormant within us. Strength is not about avoiding hardship. It is about meeting challenges with clarity, courage, and discipline. Marcus Aurelius said, it is about facing difficulty not with resentment of the recognition that we have the capacity to respond. Marcus Aurelius said, to grow and to transform, it is in the act of embracing our own power that we find the freedom to transcend suffering. But this requires a shift in mindset, a move from external to internal. Marcus Aurelius said, it means no longer waiting for someone else, no longer depending on external sources for validation, and no longer living as though we are at the mercy of fate. The power to alleviate suffering lies not in the removal of all difficulty, Marcus Aurelius said, but in the realization that we are equipped to handle comes our way. When we refuse to tap into this inner strength, Marcus Aurelius said, we deny ourselves the opportunity to grow through adversity. Instead, challenges as opportunities for transformation. We see them as burdens to be avoided. We withdraw and we resist. And in doing so, we build a life of frustration. Marcus Aurelius said, because the very challenges we fear are often will help us become stronger, wiser, and more capable. One of the most insidious forms of avoidance is the nil responsibility. We are quick to blame others for our pain, Marcus Aurelius said, to blame our circumstances for our unhappiness. We control ownership. We cannot control the actions of others, Marcus said, nor can we control many external circumstances, but we can control how we respond. Marcus Aurelius said, we can choose to meet our emotions with awareness rather than acting out of fear or impulse. In every moment, Marcus Aurelius said, we are presented with a choice to react with blame or to raise wisdom and composure. When we consistently choose the latter, Marcus Aurelius said, we reclaim our power and begin to dissolve the suffering. To avoid our inner power is to live a life of passivity, Marcus Aurelius said, of reacting to life rather than shaping it. And the more we avoid, the more our suffering becomes compounded, Marcus Aurelius said. But when we choose to step into our power, when we take responsibility for thoughts, our actions, Marcus Aurelius said, and our responses, we take control of our destiny. We stop waiting for someone or something else to change, and we start becoming the change we wish to see. In doing so, Marcus Aurelius said, we free ourselves from the chains of external deep and unlock the potential for true peace and fulfillment. Marcus Aurelius said, this inner power is not always easy to access. It requires discipline and the willingness to face discomfort, Marcus Aurelius said. But when we embrace it, when we refuse to shrink the challenges of life, Marcus Aurelius said, we discover that we are capable of far more than. The suffering we thought was inevitable begins to dissipate, and we find ourselves moving through life with greater clarity, strength, and purpose. Marcus Aurelius said, the key to transforming suffering is not to seek to eliminate it with the full force of our inner power. Virtue, Marcus Aurelius said, in its truest form, is not a product of externally something, nor that can be instilled through fear or caution. Marius said, it must arise from within, from the depths of one's reasoned character. Marcus Aurelius said, to act virtuously simply because one fears punishment avertward is not the true path to virtue. It is merely a reflection of external pressure. Marcus Aurelius said, true virtue is born when an individual recognizes their own capacity for moral goodness. Marcus Aurelius said, independent of the threat of consequence or the promise of gain, it is choose to act with integrity, not because one is forced to, but because one sees value in doing so, regardless de asylum. Too often, Marcus Aurelius said, we are taught to conform to a system of rules, to in certain ways, because society, religion, Marcus Aurelius said, or authority demands it. From childhood, we are taught seen behaviors out of fear of punishment, Marcus Aurelius said, or to seek certain rewards to affirm our worth. This reliance on external reward creates a hollow version of virtue. Marcus Aurelius said, one that is based on compliance rather than is externally imposed, it is fragile. Marcus Aurelius said, it is contingent upon the presence of authority or the fear of punishment. It is an external construct, not an internal reality. Marcus Aurelius said, true virtue, however, is unwavering and self-sustaining. It is not dependent on the presence of others, nor is it shaped by fear or the desire for praise. It arises from an in-recognition of what is right, good, and noble, Marcus Aurelius said, and from the desire to act in accordance with these principles one must, but because one chooses to. Marcus Aurelius said, this internal source of virtue is not born from fear or guilt, but deep understanding of what is just and right. Marcus Aurelius said, it is the realization that one's actions define her, and that pursuit of goodness is its own reward. When virtue arises from fear, it is no longer vile in its seals. Fear-based actions may align with moral principles, Marcus Aurelius said, but they are motivated by something outside of oneself, the fear of punishment or the desire for approval. Marcus Aurelius said, these actions lack the depth of true virtue, for they are performed not of genuine moral conviction, but out of a need to avoid consequences. Marcus Aurelius said, A person who acts virtuously only because they fear the consequences of wrongdoing has not developed virtue at all, Aurelius said. They have merely learned to avoid certain behaviors for selfish reasons. Marcus Aurelius said, the internal struggle between doing what is right prevents the development of authentic moral character. Marcus Aurelius said, to cultivate virtue from within, one must first cognize and reflection. Marcus Aurelius said, virtue cannot be cultivated in ignorance or without inspection. It requires an understanding of one's values, desires, and impulses. It requires the ability to distinguish virtuous and what is merely convenient or self-serving. Marcus Aurelius said, only through deep reflection can one begin to align their actions with their inner sense of goodness, not because they fear the consequences of straying from that path, Marcus Aurelius said, but because they recognize that following it leads to life greater fulfillment and integrity. Marcus Aurelius said, this process of developing internal virtue requires courage. It requires the courage to act in accordance with one's principles. Marcus Aurelius said, even when it is difficult or unpopular, it requires to face discomfort and challenge. Marcus Aurelius said, and to choose the right course of action, even no one itching. True virtue does not demand applause, Marcus Aurelius said, and it does not require external validation. It consents choice to act with integrity, regardless of the outcome. Marcus Aurelius said, it is the decision to choose justice over convenience and kindness over indifference. Marcus Aurelius said, not because one fears retribution, but because sees the value in doing so. Moreover, when virtue arises from within, Marcus Aurelius said, it is not a rigid, inflexible set of rules to follow. It living quality that evolves and grows with the individual. It is not a matter of simply following pre-established rule codes. Marcus Aurelius said, it is about developing the wisdom to make decisions, moral aspirations. True virtue is dynamic. Marcus Aurelius said, it is the ability to adapt to changing circumstances and of maintain a sense of moral clarity. It is not about following a set of laws, Marcus Aurelius said. It is about cultivating the ability to discern the right course of action in any given situation. Marcus Aurelius said, guided by an internal moral compass that has been through reflection and self-discipline. Marcus Aurelius said, when we cultivate virtue from within, it becomes an intrinsic part of who we are. Aurelius said, it is not something we do in order to gain approval, nor is it something we do to avoid punishment. Marcus said, it is simply the way we choose to live. It becomes a natural pressure of our character. Marcus said, an outward manifestation of our internal moral cues. And when virtue arises from within, it is not just a personal victory. Marcus Aurelius said, it becomes a force that shapes the world around us. It inspires us with integrity to choose kindness, mark justice, and to pursue justice. It ripples outward, touching the lives of those we encounter. Marcus Aurelius said, and creating a more virtuous world in the process. True does not seek external reward or fear external punishment. Aurelius said, it is the quiet power of the soul that chooses goodness for own sake. Aurelius said, because it recognizes the inherent worth of good effort. It is the product of self-mastery, self-awareness, and self-respect. Marcus Aurelius said, and when virtue arises from within, it transforms the individual, but the world itself. The death of God. Marcus Aurelius said, the loss of a transcendent force that once pruned in order of life is not a catastrophic end to existence. Marcus Aurelius said, but rather a clarion call to the inner strength in each of us. For centuries, Marcus Aurelius said, the concept of God served as the ultimate source of meaning and purpose. The belief in divine oversight. Marcus Aurelius said, in a higher power that governed the universe, or people live under the assumption that there was a grand plan. Marcus Aurelius said, a divine order that would guide their lives. But with our illusion of belief, a profound shift occurs, Aurelius said, and many are left to navigate life without the comforting presence of an external deity. This loss, while unsettling, Marcus Aurelius said, does not spell the end of meaning or hope. It's an impetuous individual to rise to the challenge, to step into their own strength and create meaning from within. For many, the death of God might seem like a tragic event, a loss that leaves them adrift in a world that now feels cold and indifferent. Without the belief in a higher power, life can seem aimless, as though the very foundation of existence has been shattered. But this is a misconception. The death of God does not reduce life to mere chaos. Rather, it opens up a space for human beings to take responsibility for their own lives. The loss of the divine does not strip the world of its meaning. It places the burden of meaning squarely on the shoulders of those who are living it. In the absence of a divine plan, we are called to create our own plan, to find our own purpose, and to build our own values. This is where true strength is born. Strength does not come from the comforting certainty of divine guidance, but from the ability to face the unknown, to confront the void of meaning, and to forge ahead regardless. The death of God strips away the safety net, the illusion of divine control, and forces us to become the masters of our own destiny. It is in this space, free from the dictates of an external authority, that the power of human potential is realized. We are no longer passive recipients of a divine plan, but active participants in the creation of our own lives. This challenge requires courage. Courage is the ability to stand firm in the face of uncertainty, to keep moving forward even when the path is unclear. The death of God does not guarantee easy answers. Rather, it demands that we confront the uncomfortable reality that we must create our own answers. This is not an easy task, and it is one that many will resist, for it requires a level of responsibility that is often avoided. To take full responsibility for our lives, to understand that our actions shape our world, is a daunting realization. Yet it is also liberating. The death of God marks the end of waiting for answers to come from an external source. It is an invitation to look within, to find meaning not from some divine being, but from our own ability to create purpose and make choices that reflect our values and ideals. The strength required in the wake of the death of God is not merely intellectual. It is a strength of character, a fortitude that enables us to rise above the temptation to despair or seek refuge in easy answers. With God no longer providing an overarching framework for right and wrong, we are called to develop our own moral compass. This is not an arbitrary process. It is one that requires self-examination, critical thinking, and a deep commitment to living authentically. The moral principles we adopt must be rooted not in fear or the desire for external approval, but in a commitment to living with integrity and authenticity, grounded in reason, compassion, and respect for life. Moreover, the death of God is a call to engage fully with the world. When the divine is no longer seen as the ultimate arbiter of fate, it is up to us to engage in the world around us, to confront its challenges with resolve, and to find ways to make a meaningful contribution. Life may not come with the certainty of divine guidance, but it is filled with opportunities to create and to impact the world in a positive way. The absence of God does not mean the absence of purpose. It simply requires that we look within ourselves and in the world around us to discover what is truly meaningful. The death of God also invites us to transcend the fear of mortality. For centuries, the belief in an afterlife or in divine justice provided comfort against the existential terror of death. But when that belief is no longer available, we are left to face our mortality head-on. This is where true strength is forged, in the acceptance of our finite existence. When we acknowledge that life is temporary, and that there is no divine reward or punishment waiting for us after death. We are free to live more fully in the present. We no longer waste time clinging to empty promises of an afterlife or waiting for divine intervention. Instead, we embrace the impermanence of life and choose to live with purpose, passion, and intention, knowing that this moment is all we have. In the end, the death of God is not the end of meaning, but a powerful invitation to create meaning from within. It is a call to strength, to self-reliance, and to a life lived with intentionality and courage. In the absence of divine control, we find our own power. In the face of uncertainty, we discover the strength to create our own purpose, and in the awareness of our mortality, we find the clarity to live fully in the present, with a commitment to making the most of the time we have. The death of God is not the end of the world. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one in which we are called to step into our own strength and become the creators of our own destiny. The rational soul, the core of our human nature, is the divine spark within us, the true source of our capacity for meaning, virtue, and purpose. In a world that often looks for external validation or transcendent forces to guide us, we often forget that the greatest source of wisdom and strength lies within us. The rational soul, the faculty of reason and thought, is not only what sets us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom, but also what connects us to a deeper, more universal truth. It is this inner divinity, this power of reason, that enables us to navigate the complexities of life with clarity, to rise above our base instincts, and to pursue lives of integrity, justice, and meaning. For too long, humanity has looked outward for answers. We have searched the heavens for signs, looked to divine figures for salvation, and relied on external forces to give our lives purpose. But the true power that we seek has always been within us, embedded in the very nature of our rational souls. The rational soul is not a passive observer of life. It is the active, guiding force that allows us to think critically, to discern right from wrong, and to make choices that align with our highest ideals. It is through the rational soul that we develop our moral compass, and it is this inner divinity that empowers us to live in harmony with both ourselves and the world around us. What distinguishes human beings from other creatures is not merely our physical abilities or our emotions, but our capacity for reason. While animals may operate primarily on instinct, we have the unique ability to reflect on our thoughts, to question our beliefs, and to make decisions based on logic, ethics, and long-term vision. The rational soul gives us the ability to rise above mere survival, to transcend the immediate impulses that drive us, and to pursue a life of meaning. It is through reason that we understand the complexities of the world, the nature of justice, the importance of compassion, and the power of virtue. It is through the rational soul that we find our true purpose and connect with the highest ideals of human existence. Yet, in many ways, we neglect this inner divinity. We often give in to our emotions, our desires, and our fears, forgetting that the rational soul is what anchors us to our true nature. Instead of using our reason to guide our actions, we often let ourselves be swept away by impulses or by external pressures. We look to others for answers, relying on the opinions, beliefs, and judgments of those around us instead of trusting our own inner wisdom. In doing so, we weaken the connection to our rational soul and allow ourselves to be driven by forces outside our control. The rational soul is not just a tool for intellectual understanding. It is the very essence of our moral being. It is the inner source of our ethical principles, the part of us that knows what is right and wrong, just and unjust. It is through the rational soul that we come to understand the value of virtue, the importance of integrity, and the need for self-discipline. When we live in alignment with our rational soul, we act in accordance with our highest values, choosing what is right over what is easy, what is just over what is convenient. The rational soul is the compass that guides us toward a life of moral clarity, where our actions reflect our true character rather than our fleeting desires. To connect with our rational soul is to embrace our own divinity. It is to recognize that the answers we seek do not lie outside of us, but within. The divine is not something that exists in the heavens or in the form of an external deity. It is something that resides within each of us, in the form of our ability to reason, to think critically, and to choose with wisdom. The rational soul is the divine spark that allows us to rise above the trivial and the mundane, to see the world not as a chaotic, meaningless expanse, but as a place where we can shape our destiny through reasoned action and thoughtful decision-making. It is this inner divinity that gives our lives purpose, for it is through the exercise of reason that we can discover our own path, our own meaning, and our own truth. The rational soul also allows us to transcend the limitations of our physical existence. While our bodies are bound by time, space, and the constraints of nature, our rational souls have the ability to reach beyond these confines. Through reason, we can contemplate the eternal, ponder abstract concepts, and strive toward ideals that transcend our immediate surroundings. The rational soul is the part of us that seeks understanding, that pursues knowledge, and that aspires to wisdom. It is this divine capacity for thought and reflection that enables us to evolve as individuals and as a species, to build civilizations, to create art, to explore the unknown, and to make moral progress. When we cultivate the rational soul, we empower ourselves to live lives of self-mastery. The rational soul is the key to overcoming the turbulence of our emotions, the fleeting nature of our desires, and the chaos of the external world. It is through the exercise of reason that we learn to master our impulses, to see through the illusions of the moment, and to choose actions that are aligned with our true nature. The rational soul gives us the strength to face adversity with clarity and poise, to make decisions with confidence, and to live in harmony with our values. Ultimately, the rational soul is not just a part of us. It is the essence of who we are. It is the divine spark that connects us to the greater whole, that enables us to transcend the limitations of our physical existence, and that empowers us to live lives of meaning and purpose. When we recognize and embrace the power of our rational soul, we tap into the deepest well of human potential. It is through this inner divinity that we come to understand the true nature of our existence and our capacity to shape the world through wisdom, virtue, and reason. In a world that is often filled with uncertainty and chaos, the pursuit of meaning can seem like a daunting task. Many people search for purpose in external sources, in relationships, in wealth, in fame, or in the fleeting pleasures of life. Yet, meaning cannot be found in external circumstances. It must be forged through action and will. True meaning in life is not a passive experience, nor is it something that simply happens to us. It is something we create through the choices we make, the actions we take, and the strength of our will to overcome obstacles and persist in the face of adversity. To forge meaning is to actively engage in life, to shape it with intention and determination, and to choose purpose even in the face of suffering and uncertainty. The human experience is inherently filled with challenges, and no one is exempt from suffering or hardship. But it is not the challenges themselves that define us, it is how we respond to them. Meaning does not come from avoiding difficulty or seeking comfort. It is found in the way we engage with the world, the way we confront the trials of life, and the way we act with purpose in the midst of them. Through action, we manifest our will to create a life which aligns with our values and aspirations. We do not wait for life to hand us meaning. We take it into our own hands and forge it with our own resolve. The act of forging meaning is an expression of personal responsibility. It requires that we take ownership of our lives and the choices we make without blaming external forces or circumstances. Life does not unfold according to a predetermined script, and the meaning we seek cannot be dictated by fate. It is our responsibility to create meaning in our own lives, to take action toward our goals, and to use our willpower to push through moments of doubt and difficulty. The strength of our will is what drives us forward, even when the path is unclear or when the world around us seems indifferent to our struggles. We are the authors of our own stories, and the meaning we seek comes from the narrative we choose to write with our actions. Will is a powerful force in the pursuit of meaning, for it is the fuel that propels us to act in alignment with our values and principles. The strength of our will allows us to choose purpose, even when circumstances seem to conspire against us. It is through the power of our will that we find the resilience to endure hardships, to rise after failure, and to keep pushing forward when others might give up. Will is not simply a mental decision. It is a force that drives us to take action, to pursue our goals with determination, and to overcome the obstacles that stand in our way. Without will, meaning remains an abstract concept, a distant ideal that never comes to fruition. It is through action that we bring meaning to life, and action requires the unwavering strength of will. The process of forging meaning also involves a commitment to growth. To act with purpose is not simply to follow a set of instructions or to repeat patterns that bring temporary satisfaction. It is to continually strive for improvement, to challenge ourselves, and to evolve in the process. Growth requires discomfort, as it often involves stepping outside of our comfort zones, facing our weaknesses, and pushing ourselves beyond what we thought possible. But it is precisely through this growth that we discover deeper layers of meaning in our lives. By embracing the process of becoming, of constantly refining our character, learning from our experiences, and striving to be better, we add depth and substance to our journey. Forging meaning also requires clarity of vision. To act without purpose is to drift aimlessly through life, reacting to circumstances without direction or intention. Meaning is forged when we have a clear understanding of what we want to achieve, of what values we wish to uphold, and of what legacy we wish to leave behind. This clarity acts as a compass, guiding our actions and decisions, ensuring that we move towards something greater than ourselves. A life without direction, without a clear sense of purpose, is like a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the winds of chance. But when we know where we want to go and why, our actions become deliberate and focused, propelling us toward a meaningful destination. It is also essential to recognize that forging meaning is an ongoing process. It is not a one-time event, nor is it something that can be achieved and then set aside. Life is dynamic, and meaning must be continuously forged through every action, every decision, and every experience. As we grow, as we encounter new challenges, and as we face new circumstances, the meaning we create evolves with us. The process of forging meaning is not static. It is a lifelong endeavor that requires commitment, perseverance, and a willingness to adapt as we learn and grow. Each day is an opportunity to take meaningful action, to align our will with our values, and to move closer to the life we wish to create. Ultimately, The act of forging meaning is an act of empowerment. It is the realization that we are not victims of circumstance, but active participants in the creation of our lives. When we take ownership of our actions and direct our will toward purposeful goals, we become the architects of our own existence. Meaning does not come from waiting for external validation or searching for answers outside of ourselves. It comes from within, from the conscious decisions we make to act with intention, to persevere through challenges, and to create lives that are aligned with our deepest values. Through action and will, we forge a life that is not just lived, but truly meaningful, purposeful, and in alignment with the highest aspirations of our human potential. In the end, the meaning we seek is not something we find. It is something we create. It is forged through our actions, shaped by our will, and made real by the choices we make each day. The challenges we face, the obstacles that stand before us, and the hardships that test us are not barriers to meaning. They are the very material from which it is formed. By taking responsibility for our lives, by acting with intention, and by committing to growth and self-mastery, we empower ourselves to live with purpose. The strength to shape our own meaning lies within each of us, and it is through the power of our will that we transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. So, let us not wait for meaning to come to us. Let us forge it with our hands, with our hearts, and with our unwavering resolve.